Okay, let me get back into the share. Okay,
You all good?
hold on. Yep, we're streaming now. So, yes, there we go. We are actually live on YouTube and LinkedIn, FYI.
Okay, and it's 12:59.
All right, we've got a few participants. So I
Let
say
me,
we can start letting people in.
here he comes. And there they are.
Okay, here we are. I got
Hmm.
exactly 1 o'clock on my calendar. I believe that we are recording. Yay, as I sometimes forget to do. And also that we are now live on both LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you are streaming there, welcome there. And if you are here, welcome here. For those of you who are here, I do want to encourage you to participate, as much as you feel comfortable. Please ask questions, and please don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have a question or something that you need to share. So, with that being said, my trusty assistant will let people in as they arrive, and we will get started since it's right at the top of the hour. So, welcome to the $100,000 mistake. Why basically working more is killing your profits. Um, I am Angie Dobransky. I'm a business and executive coach, author of 2 books, public speaker, and your partner for radical success. I want to thank you very much for spending your time with me today. I do consider time to be our most valuable resource, and I will try to make it worth your while. So, today we're going to tackle the most expensive mistake that business owners make and why it's costing them a leak of over $100,000 in profit, or more, depending on the business. And by the end of this session, you're going to know how to reclaim your time, how to scale your business smarter, and how to future proof your company in the age of AI. So, welcome. I appreciate you being here and I appreciate you watching live as well. So, let's talk about the trap of overwork. You set out to build a company, not just another job, and yet most owners are working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, and they're stuck in the weeds and they're fighting fires most of the time, instead of doing the work that they really should be doing. And that's where the profit leak comes into play, because the work of the CEO is the most valuable work in the company. And if you're spending your time doing other work, then you're not actually doing the work that brings the most value to your company. And in today's rapid change environment in business, that can be extremely dangerous. So the truth is, working 60 or more hours a week is not really making you more money. It's really destroying your company's value. So the question that I want to launch in our poll here is, how many hours did you work last week? And if you're watching along, think about this. How many hours did you, oops, hold on, wrong poll launch there. Let me fix that. Anyway, if you're watching live, I want you to think about this. How many polls, how many hours did you work last week? Did you work less than 40? Did you work 40 to 50? Did you work 50 to 60? Or did you work 60 plus? And here's the reality, if you worked more than 60 hours a week and it wasn't for some reason because, you were in an event or it was unusual circumstance for the week, you're working far too much. And I see a lot of people are coming in around the 40 to 50 mark, which I actually think is a pretty good time frame of reference. I have a personal theory. I call it the third theory about how we spend our time. So if you think about spending a third of your time essentially sleeping and resting, a third of your time, playing and eating, and a third of your time working and producing, then you would work about 56 hours a week. FYI, just to put that in perspective, you'd play and eat 56 hours a week and you'd sleep and rest 56 hours a week, because that's how many hours that we have in the week. So the question is, how are you spending your time? And are you spending it in ways that are really bringing the company more value, or are you just stuck? Because the truth is, 87% of owners are spending a lot of time doing the wrong work. They're doing tasks that someone else should handle or should be automated. Because even if you're a very small business in today's day of AI and machine learning and automation, most of your day-to-day admin tasks, and we'll talk about other things as well, can be very well automated so that you're not spending your time there. And, the lost opportunity, it doesn't just cause you stress because you're working too much, it costs you profits, because there's lost opportunities, your growth is stalled because you're in the way, and the company depends far too much on you. If you can't build a company that runs without you, you're not building a company at all. You're just creating a big job for yourself. And the reality is what's coming, this hidden cost of working and staying in the weeds too much is getting even greater in the future because, with 2025, we're seeing the AI revolution. And if you don't have time to spend strategically planning and rethinking the way that you approach your business, you're going to miss the boat on the transformation that is coming. And it's coming for every industry and it's coming in various ways. And if we're building companies, we really need to understand how it is that we can, spend our time wisely, not only reap the benefits of time saving by using these tools, but use that time we save to rethink the way that we do business in the future. So, if you've been raised in the United States for sure, and other countries as well, but I know the United States has it more than most. You were raised with this idea of this whole hustle culture that the busier you are, the harder you work, the more hours you spend at work, the more successful you are. And that, to earn a lot of money requires working all the time. I certainly thought that when I was young, actually, and looked at the CEOs and leaders around me. I looked at the way that I was working and kind of figured they were working the same way. But it's not really true. There are times you need to hustle, but the truth is, if you're always hustling, you're not growing. Hustle is poison to growth because it doesn't allow you to rest and reset and be strategic and think forward. And the truth is, your hustle isn't getting you any extra brownie points with your customers either, because buyers discount founder dependent businesses. You can't grow your own team if you're in the way. And it's only your team that can take the business to the levels that you're trying to reach without burning you out. So you've got to have this time to stop your own hustle, right? So that you can strategically think and remove yourself from the business in ways that you're no longer the bottleneck. And here's the AI advantage, which, we can all see it right here in front of us, and we're all trying to figure out how to use it. And the big companies have been trying to figure out how to use it for 5 years or more. So we really need to get on this boat. But your competition isn't hustling harder. They're automating smarter, and they're using AI and machine learning and different systems to scale without adding hours. The time savings that can be realized through AI alone is unbelievable. And we're going to get into it a little bit more, but I think there's ways that you can use AI to solve some of what we'll call the common business owner bottlenecks. So let's talk about, AI being your new strategic imperative. It's not a fun tool. It's not a catchy gimmick. It's an imperative. And so I want to go a little bit deeper into it because AI is a tidal wave that is reshaping every single industry and the way we work and interact with our customers. And it has the potential to be very powerful and beneficial for all of us. And it also has the potential to leave behind those who don't see this tidal wave coming and figure out how to surf it into the future. So one of your best uses of time right now is not sifting through your inbox or dealing with customer fires or, showing your team members over and over again how to do things. It's asking yourself these questions and really thinking about the answers. How will AI change your industry landscape? What is going to change about the way your industry operates in the wave of these new tools? And then, on top of that, what new opportunities can AI create for your own growth? Because, with every change, there comes the potential for new opportunities and new ways to earn income. And where can you leverage AI to scale without adding headcount? It's really interesting because as a very small business owner myself, a lot of things that I used to use a VA for or a personal assistant, or a designer. I don't really need those things anymore because I can automate them. AI can do them for me. I can express my thoughts into a machine and get the result instead of a person. And it speeds up results and it saves me money and allows me to scale in ways without adding more people to the headcount. Doesn't mean no people, but it does change the way that we work. If you're too buried in the day to day to answer these questions and think about what they mean for your business, you're going to miss the boat. AI improves efficiency, it grows profit, it fuels growth, and it increases the future value of your customer, of your company. And it does all that while theoretically delivering a better product to your ultimate customer. So, if you're here or you're live streaming and you're chatting, drop it in. Where do you think AI is going to hit your industry first? Is it going to be in cost reduction? Is it going to be improved customer service? Or is there a big competitor that might be coming to radically change the way that your business is done? So as you think about that, AI saves costs because it can produce more work faster. It can reduce headcount. It can look for inefficiencies and improve processes in ways that improve costs. And it can do that in any industry. Customer service is improved through AI by the use of personalization, and more importantly, by gathering data from your customers so that you understand their needs and using that data to improve the product that you deliver to them and creating this endless loop of product improvement and improved customer satisfaction. And in competition, who's out there that might be coming to just completely change your industry? There are some big players in the market who are basically selling software services to service-based companies where the software provider is the one gathering all the data, and the person with the data is the one who can change the industry. So make sure that you have data, that you're collecting data, that you have access to the data that you collect, because this is your new strategic imperative if you want to move forward and be competitive and really reap the values again, because there's enormous value with this change. So I want to think about how you transition from where you are today in the weeds, working too many hours, doing things that you shouldn't be doing, into how you really focus on, let's call them the $500 an hour activities, strategic visioning, AI planning, developing partnerships, that kind of thing. So let's break it down. And I like to call it just the CEO transition framework because it kind of, it's a way to frame it so that you're working through this transition over time. So, and I've sent you, if you've registered, a workbook in advance that is a little workbook you can use to audit your time as a CEO. If you're live streaming it, there'll be a link for it. And if you registered, it will be emailed to you after the webinar as well. Tomorrow is when the emails go out. So the first step in the CEO transition framework is to audit your time. It is to really look back and see how you're spending your time and deciding, what is it that only you can do? And then everything else essentially on your plate should either be delegated or automated. And it's interesting how CEOs get stuck with this idea of what only they can do. And I'll give you an example. I had a client a long time ago who was scaling quite well, but was really stuck at a scale point because the only person in the company who could go out and do the estimates was the owner and their partner. And in discussing it with them, I said, surely you can systemize and train other people how to estimate. No, 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 they insisted repeatedly. Only they could do it. And as I would question them, well, how is it that you do these estimates? They insisted that it was gut and feeling and years of knowledge, which they had developed. And so they were just kind of making it up, although they were extremely accurate. And these are the lies that we tell ourselves. So I insisted that I could actually create a tool that could replicate what was in their heads. And they didn't believe me, but they agreed to play my little game. And so I asked them a series of questions about what it was that they did when they went in and estimated. And they were estimating essentially how long it would take to pack and move a house. And so I asked them questions like, well, what's the first thing you look at? How many rooms are there in the house? Okay, so that's a question, right? What kind of rooms are there? What kind of closets are there? How much clutter is there? Is it, how much storage is there? It was just, as you asked enough questions, yes, they were doing it by gut, but they were really answering a whole bunch of questions in their head, which in talking it through, we were able to get those questions out. This was a number of years ago, so we didn't have all the tools we have today. So we created a basic Excel spreadsheet that you could go in and you could you need to see the home to understand the amount of possessions, but otherwise you could almost literally do this over the phone. And they were shocked to discover that the spreadsheet was equally, if not more accurate than they were, and that really anyone could use the spreadsheet with a small amount of training. So when you identify what only you can do, what is it that only you can do? Because if it's knowledge in your head, if the only reason that the customers need you is because you're the only one who knows how to service them, you need to turn that knowledge into a process. So that is not on the list of things that only you can do. So once you've kind of figured out what only you could do, and you've come up with this list of what should be delegated or automated, obviously there's a transition period here, right? Like you're not going to just wake up tomorrow and take your entire delegate automate list and delegate automate it and call it a day. You have to look at time and cost and available resources and sort of plan it out over time. So that's why we call it the transition framework. But the next piece is to basically start to pass these tasks to team members or tools. Who can do it or what can do it? QuickBooks automation can save enormous amounts of bookkeeping. Zapier connects is one of many tools that connects all of your tools together so you're not re-entering data or moving it around. AI can do some pretty amazing things, include scanning your inbox and telling you what's important in your email and drafting potential responses to the emails that need responding to. So over time, you need to figure out, what can you get rid of? How can you use these tools to move them on? And then, and this is a fun, deceptively difficult one, is now that you've cleared all these things off your plate, you need to shift your focus to the $500 hour activities, which are strategy, vision, partnerships, planning for AI, investigating new tools, planning for the future of the company. And it's funny because I've had many clients who reached this point in their level of CEO business owner where they had the team and they had delegated and automated and they were so used to being in the weeds that once they got all that stuff off their plate, their biggest coaching question for me was, I'm not sure what I should do with my day. And it's interesting because, you're used to sitting behind your desk and being in the weeds, coming in and thinking about how do I strategically use this day to plan for the future is an entirely different skill set and one that takes a little bit of, again, transitioning to shift to. So let's talk about, some of these shifts that you need to do. What are your $500 an hour or more activities? When I talk about strategy and visioning, I'm talking about setting the long-term direction and the company goals and revisiting those regularly to be sure that they, are current and proper for modern times. You should be out there building partnerships, creating valuable business relationships and alliances, whether that's with a referral network, with financial partners, with potential investors, with the customer base as a whole, with the educational resource. But you should be out there building partnerships with people that can enhance the value and help you to grow your business. And now, more important, this has to be, has to be, has to be. I'll say it again, has to be, has to be, has to be part of the way that you're spending time every single week if you're trying to grow a company, which is your AI roadmap design. You need to be planning automation to cut your costs and to create opportunities and seeing where AI can take your business in the future. Because if you are not looking at this again, you're going to be left behind. And every single minute or hour of the day that you spend sorting through your email box or fixing minor issues that somebody else could do or running out to do an estimate because you can't figure out how to get what's out of your head onto a piece of paper, those things are stealing time from the high impact activities that will really make a huge difference in your business. And so, I want you to take a moment and reflect. If you actually freed up, let's say 10 hours a week because you automated, delegated, and got stuff off your plate, what would you do with that time? It's an interesting question. What would you do with the extra 10 hours a week? Now, if you're working 70 hours a week, I'm hoping that you'll use some of that 10 for rest and reflection. But if you're working 40, 50, 55, 60 hours a week and you got back 10, what could you do with that time that would really move your business forward? You need to think about that and then, put it into a plan that really makes it happen. So I just want to think about, and again, this will be in the workbook that I send you. But when I walk you through, and the workbook does your CEO time audit, here's some common culprits. The average CEO spends more than 2 hours a day in their email inbox, and that's more than 2 hours a day. That's 10% of the entire day of the 24 hours. That's crazy. And there is a solution here. You can add filters, you can automatically forward things to team members that make sense. And there's an awful lot of AI tools that can help you manage your inbox, not only by drafting potential responses to emails, but by reading your email box on a regular basis and alerting you to what needs to be paid attention to and what does not. You can use it to create filters and systems for your email that just make sure that only the important emails get to you without losing track of the things that you're filtering away. Another, big waste of time is manual reporting. People are filling out spreadsheets and they're doing all sorts of things, pulling in data so that they can look at and see what's happening in their business, which is a very important business activity. But you should be automating that. You can easily create automated dashboards. There are simple off-the-shelf tools nowadays that can do this for you. Automated dashboards that are basically going out and pulling all the information in from your data sources to give you a snapshot that you can see, at a glance, rather than spending time filling out reports or reading reports. And then, the biggest time waster of all is unproductive meetings. We've all sat in that meeting and thought, number one, what am I doing here? And then number two, at the end of the meeting, what was the point? And we really need to avoid that. And those are the real solution to unproductive meetings is to have a clear agenda that everybody knows in advance with time limits that are, set in stone. And at the end of the day, with some delegation as to who's going to do what at the end of the meeting. If you walk away from a meeting without a clear picture of who's supposed to do what, there really was no purpose to the meeting. And so when you start to move these things off of your plate, you can really, figure out how to get a lot of time back. So which of these things, these three things that I'm going to share with you, I can't make it work anyway, so I'll just ask the question. So which of these three things steals the most of your time? Is it time spent with email? Is it time spent gathering reports? Or is it time spent in unproductive meetings? Because, that's the first place that you should start in getting your time back, is the place that's taking up the most of your time. And if you haven't got a hold of your email box, that is probably it. And then number two is generally the unproductive meeting concept. So let's talk about your 90-day blueprint to change, transition from where you want to be. So if you think about spending the first 2 weeks completing sort of an audit of your time, and again, the workbook has, sort of some worksheets that you can use, but they're pretty generic because this is pretty simple. So basically, you just spend a week or two tracking your time and you identify what are the big time drains and what are your high value activities. And then you spend the next 3 to 6 weeks to pick 3 tasks to delegate and 1 process to automate. So look at your, time drains and figure out 3 of them that you could delegate to someone else and 1 of them that you could automate. Now, if you have more tools and less people, you could switch that ratio and automate 3 tools and delegate 1. But whatever works for you. But you basically spend the next 3 to 6 weeks figuring out how to get, 3 or 4 things off of your plate. And then for the next 5 weeks, weeks 7 to 12, I want you to block 2 hours every week for strategic thinking and AI planning. And I really want you to think about your future strategy. What does this mean for you? And those 2 hours could be 2 hours. I have 2 hours on Monday morning. They could be 30 minutes 4 times a week. They could be, 2 1-hour blocks. I would not recommend them being less than 30 minutes because strategic thinking, you have to get in the mindset. You hopefully taking some notes, writing some things down. It works best if you have at least enough time to think an idea through. And then you can use that time to build sort of your AI impact map, identify what's out there in the world of AI and where it can give you leverage in your business, large and small, and figure out how to start implementing that. And if you do this over the next 3 months, say by the end of September, so you spend the rest of the year kind of following this blueprint, you can start off 2026 with an extra 10 to 20 hours each week that you can put it into scaling your business, strategic thinking, and future proofing yourself for the next wave of business. So I'm going to give you a little success story. So I had a client, I've worked with them for a few years now. And in the beginning, they had their hands in every single part of the business. They did all the money stuff themselves. They did all the sales themselves. They did all the marketing themselves. They were involved in the production. They sat in every meeting. They worked 1 million hours a week and they had built a $4 million business, but they were very much stuck there and very, very stressed. And so over time, we made a few strategic hires. We hired a CFO/controller person to take over the day-to-day money management, which is a large piece of this particular industry. We added strategic team members that could help with marketing and sales, process development, creating new systems. And then we built systems, the owner did, built systems to multiply, their knowledge through others. So instead of having stuck with everything being in their head, they invested in some systems that they built where they basically took all of the questions that they asked themselves when making decisions and turned them into tools that team members could use. And the result of that really is that they've grown their revenue from $4 million a year to $12 million a year. Even in significant sort of economic and industry changes, they're pretty steady at this, flow of work coming in. They have time to develop a great idea that they have, which is an AI first platform that could literally transform the industry that they're in. It's an idea that's been in the owner's head. I know in working with them for quite a long time, never any time to implement that. But as we make these changes and you figure out how to get out of the weeds, you get the time to do this big, important strategic planning. And this is really, really, really how you grow your business because you're never going to grow it from the weeds. So now that we've kind of gone through it, your next few things to do, if you have not already received the CEO audit checklist, you will receive that tomorrow. Or if you're watching this online, it will be in the link, might already be, don't know, to the description. So you can download that and work through it over the next 13 weeks for the rest of the year to get yourself transitioned into the next phase. And then, book a free consultation with me. I'll give you a free 30-minute coaching call. We can talk through where you're really stuck in the weeds or what your biggest bottleneck is and give you a plan to move through that. Again, I'll send you the booking link. You can also go to my website right now if you want, radstrategic.com. Right on the header is the book a call link. But you'll also get a link in your email tomorrow. And again, if you're watching this online, it will be in the descriptions below. We need to build a business that works for you and you need to stop sacrificing your life for your business. And I know that we can do that together, particularly when you learn how to free up your time. So I will open up the floor for questions. We're at about the 27-30 minute mark, so that's pretty good. To see if anybody here online has any questions they want to ask. I know the biggest question that people ask is, how do I get started? How do I get out of the weeds? Because I'm the only one that can do these things. And the answer to that is if you have a team, start challenging your team to grow more. So just, do the time audit and start passing some things off. And if you don't have a team, there are an awful lot of automations and tools that can really free up your time. I can tell you that as a coach, I spend the overwhelming majority of my time working with clients, doing webinars like this, and creating valuable content. Most of the small tasks in my business are automated or take almost no time at all because they're heavily automated. And that is how you free up your time.
Uh, you said that the time audit, you have like a checklist in a workbook form.
Yep.
How long should a time audit, when I not say how long should it take, but in general, how much are you going over? what you're doing and recording that and an understanding, so you get a better understanding what you're doing. So your time audit, about how long does a time audit take?
So you want to spend about a week or two. If a week is pretty average, a week is good, right? If the 2 week is a more average cycle that you go through, it's better. And you really do want to recap your time for that week. But I don't recommend being like crazy and writing it like every little thing because that's taking too much time. But I do recommend, I think most people can pretty easily at the end of the day, take 10 or 15 minutes and just in big chunks, think about how you spent your day and write it down. I spent 2 hours in email. I've spent 3 hours with clients, and if you don't know how much time you spend in email, write everything else down and then do subtraction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, it does. And I already know, email is a problem, and I'm sure that's a lot of people's problem too.
Emails like this beast, you know what I mean? Every time you think you've tamed it, something else, slips through your filters, right? So let's say I got another question here. What's your advice for a startup who's not financially capable at this point to get more team? Use the tools that are online. So many subscription tools, so inexpensive. Chat GPT is 20 bucks a month and is like having a virtual assistant for a lot less money. And a really, really good use of chat, by the way, is to say, hey, what tools can I use to get these things done to get them off my plate? It's really good at analyzing what you're doing and giving you suggestions to do other things. For example, this PowerPoint was created by a tool called Gamma in 10 minutes. I very quite literally, it knows my brand colors, it has my logo. I quite literally put my outline into the tool and it kicked out this PowerPoint. The only changes I had to make were just a couple of corrections to the name of my company, which is kind of funny. And on the next slide, which we'll just go to because it can sit here while we ask these questions, it had a picture of a random person. So I had to put myself in this picture. 10 minutes to build a PowerPoint is pretty amazing. Even as a good PowerPoint builder, I couldn't put together a PowerPoint, from an outline in 10 minutes. So if you're just starting up and you can't hire the team, use the tools. And I want to give you one other little tool trick. So let's say you need to create a PowerPoint, right? But you're only going to do it once in a while, then just subscribe to the tool for 1 month and unsubscribe. So you spend $10. So Gamma is, I don't know how much it is a year, but it's $10 a month. So, for 10 bucks, you could create a PowerPoint and then just unsubscribe. And it's a very economical way to get things done. And I will give you just another clue on this. One of the best things I did this year, I'm recommending this to all of my clients, so I'll share it with you now, is that I made a list from QuickBooks of everything that I subscribed to, so everything that I paid for. And then I put next to it what I was using it for, and I fed that list into chat and I had it analyze it and make recommendations. And once I finish implementing the recommendations for some changes, it will save me close to $5,000 a year. So, some things like I use Canva. I love Canva. I have nothing against Canva when I'm telling you why I'm canceling because I think it's a fantastic tool. Whoops. Now hold on, let me go back because I think it's a fantastic tool, but I happen to have the full Adobe suite for free and it does everything that Canva does. So why would I pay for another tool? Uh, what should be done when splitting up financial decisions? Oh, that's a good question, Courtney, because one of the hardest things for people to let go of. So the simplest thing when you start to let go of your finances, the first thing to do is to hire a bookkeeper, outsource if you're small person, if you're larger in the office. But have a bookkeeper at least start doing the finances for you. So you're not the one, keeping track and have them and work with them to develop what reports would be useful to you so that instead of you as the owner trying to figure out where did the money go and how do I spend the money, you're getting a report that's giving you a useful snapshot so that you can start making financial decisions. When you get comfortable with that and you start to build a leadership team, you'll find that you can start letting some financial pieces go. So, maybe you can let pricing go if that's part of your model that you're stuck on. Maybe you can give people budgets that they can work within. But the very first step is, stop doing the bookkeeping, right? And work with whoever is doing your bookkeeping to provide you with some a snapshot report. Weekly is what I recommend, whatever makes sense for you, so that you can use that to make decisions. Uh, Here's a good question, and this is a really, really good one. Thank you for asking for business owners. ChatGPT does make mistakes, and it tends to agree with you. Yes. One of the most wonderful things about ChatGPT and one of its most fatal flaws is that by default, it always supports you. So I use this example is that you could decide that it would be a really good business idea to start knitting hats for potatoes so they would be cuter in the grocery store. And if you asked Chat if that was a good business plan, it would likely tell you it was. And it would actually create a business plan and probably even a content model for you to promote your potato hats to the grocers. That doesn't mean it's a good idea. So when you're using these tools, one of the things is to remember that they're not always correct. So you should be somewhat of a subject matter expert, and you should be using it to either do research for you or to enhance your own thoughts, not expecting it to make things up for you. But also, yeah, you should verify every fact that it gives you because even its citations are not always correct. And if you don't want it to always agree with you, if you want it to be a more critical thinker, you can say, am I crazy? What are the flaws in this? Or please act as a critical friend and tell me if you think this is a good idea. And you will get a completely different answer. And then my second, it only takes an extra second, so it doesn't really waste too much time. Chat time saver tip for you is when you ask it to do something, almost 100% of the time, ask it to try again and do better, and you'll get a better second answer than the first. And again, when you use it to create systems and things, don't assume the system's correct. Try out the system. If there are flaws, correct it yourself or go back and use the tool again. So, we're at kind of an amazing crossroads period in business right now. I just finished a really good course from Harvard Business School online on what AI is transforming the way we do business. And, I knew that before I took the course, but now that I took it, it's really, it's a revolution in business. When I started in business like 40 years ago, I know that sounds crazy to even say, but it is true. We were literally like handwriting receipts. And in a retail store, we would handwrite what we sold on a receipt. And then there was a bookkeeper in the back that would lay it all out in a big ledger book. And that was the way we kept track of inventory. And by the time I left retail, not too many years later, we had a computer tracking system that was generating orders based on what was sold. I mean, and it was, by the way, not a painless transition at all. Being part of it, I can tell you that it was expensive and we made a lot of mistakes and it took us a while to get it right. But once we did, it transformed the way we did business. And right here now in 2025, going into 2026, we're at this cusp of the next business transformation that is that big. It is as big as going from handwriting to computerization. We're now going from computerization to machine learning and generative AI. And at the end of the day, the businesses that understand it and use it to improve the customer experience, reduce their own costs, are the ones that win. And it's not those of us who get stuck in the weeds doing the day to day so that we think it's a cool tool that we'll get to one day. So I hope I don't see any more questions coming up. Wait, one more. Which social platform would best used for a clothing brand company? Which one would be more liable in future decisions? So that's a good question. If I was a clothing brand company right now, I would be on Instagram and TikTok because TikTok you can sell directly from TikTok, which is pretty exciting. And clothing is by the way, Courtney, my background was in fashion, so yay. And clothing is a very visual thing. So Insta and TikTok are your absolute best platforms. And what's more liable in future decisions? Kind of interesting, isn't it? Right? Because who knows where TikTok is going? I mean, technically, it is supposed to go out of business unless it sells off, and theoretically, maybe it's selling off, but who knows? So it could go away tomorrow. Insta is part of the big metaverse, and who knows where that goes. So, to answer your question, right now, Instagram and TikTok. For the future, pay attention to where things are going, and be an early adopter of new platforms that start to take off. Does that answer? Hopefully that answered your question. If not, book a call. We can talk about it more. I always love to spend a little time back in the roots of fashion where I came from. So anyway, we are, oh, wait, yes. All right. Excellent, Courtney. I look forward to talking to you. I'll just put my website in real quick just to make it easy and you will get a direct link to book, but there is a book a call link right on the top of the website. So anyway, business is changing. We got to get out of the weeds. And those of us who can do it and really transform the way that we spend our time and take advantage of this revolution will profit in the future. And I look forward to sharing that all with you. Again, I'm Angie Dobransky. I'm a business and executive coach. I've got 2 books that I've written, 52 Steps to Radical Success and Life Lessons in Success. I am here to help you succeed. Connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on YouTube, book a call. I'd love to talk to you, and feel free to reach out anytime that I can help you in your future success. So have a great day, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me. You will get an email tomorrow. I think it's going out 24 hours after this call started. It will have the workbook I mentioned. It'll have a link to the recording on YouTube probably, and it will have a link where you can book a call directly with me so that we can get you started on reclaiming your time and your profits. Thank you guys so much for joining.